I'll tell you, I was called into my boss's office about 10 months ago when I first started bringing this up on the air. It was not here at Newsmax, but that's how serious it was. It was Orwellian. And I just said, isn't that our job to ask these tough questions? Mike Pompeo brought this up a long time ago. Take a listen.
There's enormous evidence that that's where this began. We've said from the beginning that this was a virus that originated in Wuhan, China. We took a lot of grief for that from the outset, but I think the whole world can see now. Remember, China has a history of infecting the world, and they have a history of running substandard laboratories. These are not the first times that we've had a world exposed to viruses as a result of failures in a Chinese lab.
Hogan, I don't know if you saw the timestamp on that. That's May 3rd, 2020. So that's over a year ago now. We'd only been dealing with the coronavirus for 3 months then. You were in the Trump White House. Was this, and Kelly just brought this up, that New York Times reporter said, well, because President Trump said it, we just didn't believe him. There's the Secretary of State. Mike Pompeo's got a sterling record. How about believing him?
That's a great point. Kelly also brought up the point that the fact that the WHO is now in charge of investigating this. The WHO was on the take from the get-go. They're the ones that lied to the world about human-to-human transmission. We knew about all these things. Secretary Pompeo, someone, as you mentioned, of sterling record, people that the media knew and supposedly trusted. But it's all for naught if you have an R by your name. They did not want to believe anything that came out of this administration, regardless of solid sourcing, regardless of solid evidence. They just would not continue down that road.
Right.
They almost dismissed it or ignored it. And then, as I said before, they claim it's debunked. This has just been a dereliction of duty for all journalists across the country who refuse to press at all. If in some way it makes the president look good, but if it makes the president look bad, they go after it. You go after it full bore. You saw it on issue after issue, and this is a great example. Over a year ago, we were talking about this leak from the Wuhan lab, but the media did nothing. And now they're admitting, as Mark pointed out, they only ignored it because it came from the mouth of Donald Trump. And that, to me, is problematic. It's dangerous. People died across this country and across the world. Wuhan knew about it. China knew about it, and they lied.
As for the opening statement, we received a statement on the origins of COVID-19 from the president, where he said, among other things, that this report may include specific questions for China. Given China's lack of transparency as it relates to the WHO joint study, why does President Biden think that China would answer the questions that the U.S. wants as it relates to the origin of COVID-19?
Look, the COVID-19 pandemic has taken, I think, 1.3 million lives globally, 600,000 American lives about. And it's imperative that we get to the bottom of just where the pandemic originated, not just for the purposes of understanding this pandemic, but the pandemics to come, as I've already kind of alluded to. And so this is something that we're going to, continue to have conversations on. This is a global effort. It's not just United States alone as we're working with the WHO. This is our process here with the 90-day that I just mentioned review. But we're just going to continue to work with WHO. And WHO is going to continue to work with China on this.
So I understand why we want it to get done, but why do we think that China would cooperate?
This is something that you have to ask the Chinese government, right? This is something that should be important. It should matter to them, but this is a question for them as well.
Has the president specifically asked or made this ask of President Xi of China for their cooperation in this effort?
I'm not going to go into details of private conversation that the president may have had with President Xi. All I can say today is that we're going to do this 90-day review, and this is what the president asked for, and we'll see where it takes us.
If not the president, has the White House made this ask of the Chinese government more broadly?
Again, I don't have anything to preview.
A question on COVID. The language that you all use specifically mentioned an accident. Does that mean that you've ruled out, or the IC has ruled out, that it was deliberate or not an accident?
We haven't ruled out anything yet. Again, we're going to go through this, this redoubling down of a 90-day review, and we'll have more to share.
And then what makes the president confident that the IC community, the intelligence community rather, can come up with more better evidence in the next 90 days, given it's been working on this for the better part of the past year?
Well, he asked him to again double down, as you just mentioned, and dig in and see if we can get more data, more information. There's not much more I can say about what our intelligence community is doing. We're going to let them do this 90-day review, and we'll see where we are at the end of 90 days.
Thank you. Welcome. I wanted to follow up a little bit on Phil's question about what had changed on the COVID, on the China lab situation, and some of the other questions as well. It seems to me, despite your response to Phil, that it's clear that at least two things have changed, right? One is that Jen spent much of the last week in response to these questions focusing entirely on international investigations led by the WHO and dismissing the idea raised by a lot of us in the room about why not have the United States conduct its own investigation, and she continually referred back to the WHO as the proper place for this. So it seems like there has been a change. There also seems like there's been a change in the president's view of the possibility of a lab accident. I mean, the statement seems to elevate that possibility and give it more credence, at least, not saying that it's certain, but that it at least has the credence that deserves a kind of full investigation. And so I guess trying to get at the question some others have asked is, like, what has changed in those two things? What was it that brought the president and this White House to a different place now than it's been even just in the recent
I mean, Michael, I would say to you, this is something that was ongoing, right? This is something that has been going on since March. So this is not a change. This is something, like I said, that's been ongoing. What has changed is he wants to give another 90 days to dig a little deeper, to double down, to double down their efforts, and that is what he's asking for. But I said this earlier. The WHO doing their thing and the IC doing what they're doing currently is not mutually exclusive, right? This is something that could happen at the same time, and so. At the end of the day, we are committed to throwing everything we have at this pandemic, both domestically and internationally. That's why we've been so strong at ensuring that the WHO gets what it needs for a thorough, independent investigation, and that's why we're also devoting U.S. resources to learn more about it.
And I don't want to beat the dead horse, and it's not fair to ask you to answer for Jen, but then why was this White House so dismissive of the idea of an independent, a U.S.-led investigation if the president was already interested in that kind of investigation before? That seems to be.
Michael, I get your question. You've been doing this longer than many of us. As you know, we don't speak about everything that's being reviewed. Especially as something like this that was actually classified, and it takes time to declassify something so that we can share with all of you. So that's part of it as well. We're talking about classified information. We're talking about something that the intelligence community was working on that we don't normally every time put out there. Thank you, Michael.
I'm afraid, with apologies, not the last question. Is the White House satisfied with the cooperations getting from China on this? Because in the past, clearly it hasn't been. And if it isn't, is the president, has he got a message to China that I would like more cooperation? Are you asking China to step up in these 90 days, or is it okay?
Well, we've been working, speaking closely with WHO, right? They're the ones they're the global the global entity bringing us all together. And so they're having that direct conversation when it comes to the origins of COVID-19. And we have been pretty clear, China has not been transparent. They need to do more. And so that's what we've been, I think, very vocal about these past several months, and we'll continue to do so.
Question on the origins of the pandemic. The president says he has specific questions for China. I know that a lot of this is classified information, but can you share anything on what some of those specific questions are for China?
I can't share the specific questions that are because this is an intelligence community. They're doing, they're doing their deep dive. I can't go into that.
Okay, so about COVID and equity. I know there are, of course, COVID briefings, but the share of Black people who are making up the new coronavirus cases in cities like D.C. has risen sharply, and this is after the vaccines were widely available. In D.C. now, 80% of the new COVID cases are Black people. How concerned is the president about that, and does he see that as a failure, his responsibility, specifically when it comes to the number of Black people that we're seeing now get COVID?
So it's a great question, Yamiche. You know, earlier this week, Jen talked about the wartime kind of response that we've had to COVID-19 and the successes. We've actually seen some great successes on getting people vaccinated, but we still have a lot of work to do, right? We have, the president made a pledge to have 70% of Americans by July 4th have at least one dose in arms, 160 million Americans fully vaccinated. And so that means that we have to bring everyone along. And as you just iterated, you know, the president puts equity in everything that we do. Equity, we have a equity task force. There's a reason why we have that, because we want to make sure we don't leave communities behind. And so one of the things that we're doing and we're continuing to do is we've got to meet people where they are. That's why now in many pharmacists you can walk in and get that vaccine. It is free. It's something that clearly we're working really closely with states and local governments on. We have mobile units in communities do not have access to close access to CVS, or maybe don't even have a doctor to go to. So we have made it so that we're meeting people where we are. And one thing that we have learned: the more people who get vaccinated, the more of the confidence of the vaccine. You see that number going up. So we do have a lot of work to do, but we also have some successes that we can point to, that we can continue to replicate and continue to get out there and make sure we bring all communities along.
If I could with a quick follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said that the president, and it's true, of course, the president's put equity at all the center of a lot of what he's done on the pandemic. Of course, these numbers, though, tell a different story, just in terms of, again, here in DC, 1 in 10, I should say 8 in 10 people, the new cases are Black people. What's the disconnect there that you think? What's failing? What's broken? What could be happening more to prevent the numbers from going in the direction that they are?
Yeah, and look, as I said, we still have a lot of work to do. That's very critical and important, and it's alarming, those numbers, right? Because like I said, in order to get back to normal, we have to bring everyone along. All communities need to get vaccinated, and we have to be able to do that in a way that, like I said, we don't leave people behind. But I think one of the things that we are doing is making sure that we have those trusted voices on the ground, making sure we have a community core, more than 6,000 people, where we have people who are in those local communities that are continuing to have those conversations with people who have hesitancy, with people who may not know or have the full information. And so this is what we are continuing to do, and this is not lost on us, right? Like I said, those numbers are alarming, and we're going to continue to do the work. It's not done yet. We are not done yet.
Hey, I have to start by apologizing because I'm going to ask about the COVID origins again, but you said you were confident, the administration is confident in U.S. investigation into this, but are you guys confident in the World Health Organization's credibility? This statement greatly differs from the findings that the organization has put out. They said it was extremely unlikely that this came from a lab leak. Is the administration going to call on the World Health Organization to call for a new investigation, an independent investigation? How confident in the results that you're finding that?
Yeah, I mean, we've been very clear on that. We've been very clear with the WHO to continue to get to the bottom of this, to get the additional data that we need to figure out where the origin of COVID is from or came from. And so this is like I said, we've been in vocal. We're going to continue working with the WHO. We rejoined the WHO once very early on, and one of the reasons why we did that is to be able to hold them accountable as well, right? This is a global institution that brings everyone together, and so it's important that we get. It's important that they have the information, they get the information, so we know how to move forward.
Last one on COVID-19 origins. If it turns out that COVID-19 originated from some sort of a lab accident in China, which the president now says one element of the intel community thinks is possible, would the president seek to punish China?
We're not going to go there just yet. We have to go through the 90-day review, and once we have the 90-day review, we'll be able to reassess.
But just on a 30, just take a step back, anything that kills 591,116 Americans, is that something, if another nation either was responsible or knew more than they were letting on, like you said, they weren't letting the inspectors in, and that hurt the overall investigation forever. What would the president do? Would he do anything?
I mean, he's doing something right now. He asked his team back in March, right, to do this, to look into the origins of COVID-19. This is incredibly important. Like his statement says, we need to find out where the COVID-19 originated from. So the president has been very clear. He actually, spoke out about this back in 2020. So this is not the first time we've heard his voice, his concern about the origins of COVID-19. So we're just taking the next step. I'm just not going to prejudge. I'm not going to make a statement until we know what happens after this 90-day review. Thanks for that.
Is this the biggest man-made disaster in human history?
Yeah, it probably is. Assuming it did come from a lab, it probably is.
If it came from a
right
lab,
up.
does this classify as a political analyst doing this for a long, long time? Is this a form of bio-warfare, bioterrorism?
I mean, if it was an accident, then I don't think I'd describe it as warfare. I would describe it as extreme negligence and a failure to be part of the international community.
I still want to know what happens next. We keep hearing investigation. Can it be? Here's Jen Psaki yesterday, and I love this. She says independent investigation. I want to play the soundbite, then we'll get some reaction, Kelly. But take a listen to what the White House press secretary had to say about this.
The president believes there needs to be an independent investigation, one that's run by the international community. It's an international pandemic that has killed hundreds of thousands of people around the world. He believes the Chinese need to do more to put forward data, to be more transparent. And in the second phase of this effort, he's certainly hopeful that will be the case. And he believes that every theory should be explored through that process, but that we shouldn't jump to conclusions before that data and that information is made available.
Kelly, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. I don't care about the international community. Any journalist worth their weight in gold in that room should have interrupted her and said, wait a second, how about an American investigation? How about an investigation that we run? Why isn't anybody asking that? What's next? That's what I want to know.